Now, let's double down on the issue of national unity, the disharmony that we're seeing that is fueled by stereotype, prejudices, ethno-religious tensions, and a whole lot more against the backdrop of the gruesome killings of 16 northern hunters in Uromi, Edo State, which has left many people feeling devastated and questioning the unity of Nigeria and Nigerians. The comments that followed those developments has been quite disturbing, with hate speech becoming prevalent, especially on social media, where the killings have been justified and other issues have been highlighted about some other incidents from different parts of the country, which also is fueling this question about what is actually happening to the social fabric of Nigeria as a nation, and what can we do about those stereotypes, about those ethno-religious tensions and tendencies that always sows the seed of disharmony and distrust among Nigerians. Now, we're going to use that development as a backdrop to this conversation to understand what we can do about those stereotypes, and also how we can chart a new course for Nigeria, where this identity crisis that seems to be sitting at the center of the conversation can be eliminated, so that we can build an ever-developing egalitarian society that works for not just some people, but for all the peoples of the country. To help us navigate this complex and very sensitive, obviously, conversation, we're joined today by Dr. Yakubu Joseph. He's a country director of Mission 21, a renowned peace practitioner and a researcher. Dr. Joseph will be joining the conversation virtually from Plateau State, Nigeria. And of course, he's had a wealth of experience, not a first timer, I dare say, on Daybreak. And we're happy to have Dr. Joseph this morning. Good morning to you. Compliments of the season, and thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, and Barkada Salah to all our viewers.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I believe maybe you must have picked up on some of the conversations we had during the interactive session, what Nigerians think about the major challenges affecting national unity. We're talking about this against the backdrop of what happened last week in Edo, where the ethno-religious sentiments fueled some of the conversations that happened online, further shedding light on the disharmony with this country. What do you make of this and many other past incidents that have been recorded, and what that says about Nigeria today?
I would like to start by expressing my deepest condolences to the families who lost their loved ones in this unfortunate incident. This is a tragedy that one expects should have brought us together as a country, as a nation. Unfortunately, some of the conversation around the incident are symptomatic of a deep-rooted problem concerning the issue of national unity and as part of our nationhood struggle.
And in talking about that, we have already highlighted some of the key issues, right? Ethno-religious tensions, prejudices, stereotypes, mistrust. How do you situate it, especially from Jos, where also this has become a common phenomenon, and in so many other parts of the country, right? Help me understand what the key ingredients are and how we got to this particular point of our journey as a nation.
Well, the problem of national unity or national integration has been part of Nigeria's journey to nationhood. This was also a problem that the colonial governments had tried to address one way or the other. Of course, they did that also putting their interests first. Through various constitutional interventions, the colonial government had tried to address this matter. And after independence, one of the major tasks before the new country, the young country, and its leaders at that time was to see a way to maintain unity among the diverse people of Nigeria, and at the same time also allow people to maintain their rich cultural heritage, their peculiarities. And because of that, even before independence, the British adopted or introduced the concept of federalism. Federalism was introduced as a device that will forge national unity and at the same time allow people to enjoy self-determination, to also enjoy their peculiarities. Unfortunately, it was not easy to manage that. And we saw what happened by 1967 with the Civil War. And continuously, the centrifugal forces which are pulling Nigeria apart, trying to tear us apart, have continued unabated. And our leaders have not really done much to build a culture that will strengthen the centripetal forces, which will keep us together as a country. There had been a couple of institutional and policy interventions like the ones mentioned by some of your guests. One, for example, the federal character. I've mentioned the Constitution, a federal constitution, which gives us a structure that was designed to maintain unity in diversity. We have also federal character. We have also the National Youth Service Corps, which was introduced after the Civil War, I guess around 1972, by the Yakubu Joseph administration. And there were so many other policy interventions that were contemplated as ways of strengthening national integration or national unity. And these efforts, I can say that they have helped to some extent, but they haven't solved the problem. The problem has persisted. And part of the reason is the nature of politics that we continue to play in this country. We play a politics of zero sum, where the winner takes all. Those who lose are not brought under the canopy to be part of the system. There is no government of national unity that can foster healing and reconciliation. Today, you see our politics is all filled with bitterness and bickering between the political parties. It's a question of which party one belongs to, and their opinions follows that line. We have also seen how religion, ethnicity have become instrumentalized by the political elite. As one of the commentators on social media mentioned that you read, unfortunately, the use of religion, ethnicity, and sectionalism to advance political interests has continued to nurture divisiveness, polarization, and hate that we see thriving in this country. So there are a lot of things I can say, including also the impoverishment of the population. We haven't done enough to overcome poverty, to eradicate poverty. This is a serious matter. Most of the people today that are acting against each other are people that are poor. They are young people who are easily brainwashed for one reason or the other, and they go after other people. It's because of poverty. We see the political elite. They are in the same political party, regardless of their religious and ethnic differences. But why are ordinary Nigerians not able to live together, to embrace each other? Is because they have sold the idea that the other people are our problem. Now, let me also say that in nation building, the issue of forging national unity is a continuous one, must always be a work in progress. There is no room for complacency. And I think that our leaders have failed to seize the moment when it is an election period. Because during elections, that's why we hear all these utterances, no thanks to social media, because people, preachers, a lot of religious leaders, clerics, Muslims and Christians, take on to social media and begin to promote xenophobic ideas when it comes to election. Do you know why the politicians are not talking about it? Because when they benefit from such rhetorics, they will look the other way. As a matter of fact, they are even fueling it. They are sponsoring these clerics who are using toxic rhetorics to continue to heat up the polity. And nobody has been prosecuted, in spite of the fact that we have anti-hate speech law in
Okay, I believe we're having a challenge with the connection there because Dr. Yakubu Joseph's connection just froze for a bit. We're going to work on that to get him back online so that we can double down on the conversation. Do we have Doctor? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we lost the connection for a bit. Please go ahead.
So the last point I was making is that when someone is committing a crime or promoting hate speech, and if it benefits someone, people in position of authority, people with responsibility to ensure that that doesn't happen, they look the other way. They don't come out and condemn such rhetorics. They don't hold those who promote such rhetorics to account. And this is part of the problem. And it looks like any kind of infringement or any breaking of the law that benefits them one way or the other is considered to be okay. And so we have a normalization of things that are wrong, things that are unacceptable, because the political class benefit from it. And this is unfortunate. This is what is getting us to where we are today.
And Doctor, just want to double down on that, right? You talk about laws, you talk about rules and regulations, you talk about institutionalizing certain aspects of our lives that should be able to guarantee national unity, or at least set us on the path to achieve national unity. Federal character that seems to pursue the idea of fairness, equity, and justice in terms of appointments, in terms of placement of people in positions of power and things like that. Talk to me about the emotion that drives the thinking of everyday average Nigerians. I mean, as humans generally, we do have our emotions, and sometimes those emotions are tied to our cultural beliefs, are tied to our traditional beliefs, or as the case may be, religious beliefs. We obviously cannot legislate emotions. There's no way we can legislate that Nigerians must love one another, right? What is a workaround to deal with some of these structural issues that you talked about, from the politics of the conversation to the point you were making earlier about not just stereotype, but certain xenophobic attacks that have been entrenched in religious sermons and political rhetoric, for instance? Have you seen anything that tells you that we're trying to, whether at the governmental level or at a social level, that we're trying to, take this system down that is forcing us to fight one another on a regular basis?
Yeah. So it's one thing to have the laws and have institutional measures to promote unity. It's another thing to have the culture that nurtures unity. You can have, the Constitution has spelled out clearly that Nigeria is a federal state. So we have a federal system, but you need a culture of federalism. You need a federative culture. That is the gap we have, is a normative gap. It's a gap between the policy designs, and actually the behavior, the attitude, the understanding, the emotion, all that you mentioned, that needs to accompany the laws, the policies that have been put in place. And this is one aspect that we need to do more. It goes beyond just a national anthem. These iconographs are good, but they are not adequate unless we do much more and illustrate explicitly and demonstrate in our daily life that, look, we believe in each other and we are together. You know what? We live in a barricaded world where the border as it is in the past, which used to be known as the physical demarcation that defines a given territory or space, is no longer that way. The border has become more fluid. The border has become more discursive, which means the border is based on the discursive construction of identities. And these discussions that are taking place in our country about identity, depicting other people in a denigrating manner, is part of the problem. How do we see in northern Nigeria, how do we see somebody from the southeast? Why do we look at him as just Nyamri? Why in the southwest calls a northerner Aboki? What is the implication? As innocent as the word Aboki is, what is the connotation behind the use of such terms? So you see that in everyday life, we look at each other in a certain light, and this really is unfortunate. And we need to do more to go beyond this. The government needs to be more decisive in coming up with measures that will strengthen our unity. Let me tell you about this problem. In other countries, Indonesia has also issues, a pluralistic society, and they have been dealing with problem of this inter-ethnic conflict, inter-religious conflict. Indonesia has invented a language that now they speak that unites the country. They have the concept of Pancasila, which recognizes all religions and ethnic groups to forge that sense of unity. Some other countries have common language. We don't have in Nigeria. There was an attempt in the 80s to popularize the idea of Wazobia. But that also was a problem because it was strengthening the majority tyranny that was prevailing at that time. And then we saw later on the tyranny of the minority ganging up against the majority ethnic groups. And now, what do we need to do as a country to forge that sense of national unity? We went to school. We studied social study. I am not Hausa, I'm from the north. And then when I meet people from the southern part of the country who are even graduates, they refer to me as a Hausa man. I said, I'm not. Hausa is just a lingua franca in northern Nigeria. They refer to me as a Muslim. And I said, no, I'm a Christian. And it's okay. A Muslim is okay also. He's a brother and a sister. And we should be just fine with that. But that people who go to school, even study social study, develop willful amnesia that they don't even remember that northern Nigeria, for example, has many ethnic groups. Or the people in northern Nigeria do not even understand or remember. They willfully decide not to remember what I would refer to as selective function of consciousness. They choose not to remember that in the South, you have the Southwest, you have Yoruba. In the South, you have several ethnic groups. In the Southeast, you have Igbos. For the person from northern Nigeria, every person from the South is an Igbo. And that is unfortunate. That is really bad. Right. So we need to wake up really, to wake up to our leaders must make effort to see that we come up with ideas that will create a sense of national identity. And I'm not saying that that will necessarily subsume and neutralize or dilute our distinctive identities, but at least something that can bring us together, just like moment of football, where we're all Nigerians. We saw what happened at Uyo, and all of us, felt we had the same mood. We felt disappointed that the match didn't end as we expected. That was a moment. Why can't we learn from our experience when our national team is playing? Why can't we have more everyday events or happenings that bring us together, and not once in a while when there is a football, for example, but on everyday basis, we need to be having experiences and exchanges and hearing narratives that bring us together, rather than narratives that continue to foster ordering, stereotypes, and construction of identities that degrade and denigrate the religious other or the ethnic other. It's unfortunate what happened in Edo State, in Uromi. Now, because the whole concept, reaction is that when you see the stranger, this is why I'm talking about border, discursive border. Now, for them, those people that they killed, they saw them as aliens, as strange, as not belonging in that space. Because for them, the border is not the territorial border of Nigeria, but the discursive borders that have been created to define outsiders and insiders, those who belong and those who don't belong, unfortunately. And this is the result of this discursive construction of identities and borders that we have seen the ugly side of it in Edo State.
Right. Doctor, just before we go, two questions. What can we learn? You mentioned Indonesia there, where the country pretty much in a very deliberate manner is being intentional about unity by coming up with a lingua franca that works for everybody, right? Where they can all identify themselves as Indonesians. And one might even ask, do we identify ourselves first as Nigerians, and what does it actually mean to be a Nigerian? But also there are other examples that are, say for instance, very close to us that we can learn from. Rwanda, for instance, how did they make this leap forward just from 1994 when our civil war happened a long time ago in the mid-60s? But also, in talking about certain intentional acts that can foster national unity, many Nigerians are disappointed that we still have not heard from the federal government about this much talked about National Values Charter that the president said he was going to unveil in the first quarter of this year. Perhaps they're still working on it. But if you have to advise, what should this National Values Charter contain, and how can we work on this Nigerian project together? Plus, there's this idea that if you go to Jos, for instance, if you go to Plateau State with all the ethno-religious tensions, you talk to one aspect, they believe the other people are the problem. You talk to the other people, they believe the other people are the problem. So you talk to Igbos, they say, we're being marginalized. And you talk to Yorubas, they say, oh, listen, this is what's wrong with Nigeria, it's the other people. Everybody seems to be losing. So my question is, who is actually winning in this confusion that we all are experiencing?
Yeah, unfortunately, the mischief makers are the ones that are winning. They tap into the sentiments, they exploit certain socioeconomic conditions that are difficult, at which the citizens are going through, ordinary people are going through. We have seen that in other countries as well, in the Western countries as well. We have seen rise of political parties that tap into some anger that people have when people feel they are losing their jobs, when people look around and see they have to compete with migrants, when people go to the grocery store and now they see that the prices of commodities have gone up, they look around and blame it. They blame it on the other. They blame it on the person who is different. This is what even happened during the Second World War with the Jews. And it continues to happen even today in many places. And therefore, dealing with our issue of poverty, poverty eradication should be a priority for the government at all levels. The local government must work, because even with what we are seeing, trying to grant autonomy to the local governments, we haven't really seen much difference. We have seen semblance of change, but we have not seen real change. We need to see the local governments doing more, fixing roads, providing water, renovating schools and building new ones, constructing healthcare centers and equipping those healthcare centers. These are basic things that can happen, and we are not really taking them as priority. What we have done is that we have lost our sense of solidarity. When I was growing up, we had public water sources. We will go to the public tap and fetch water. Today, oh yeah, Israel, everyone to their camp. People are just drilling borehole in their gated houses. And therefore, we forget our brothers and sisters who have no means. Today, even this electricity you are seeing in my office, home office, is solar. Those who cannot afford are in darkness, and they have children who need to study. The same WAEC questions that our children, we that can afford, are writing the exam, have to answer those questions. The children of the poor who have no electricity have to also sit for the same exam. This is unacceptable. I thought that COVID-19 was a wake-up call when our leaders had no chance to travel out of country for medical tourism, and they will invest in our hospitals and clinics. I haven't seen much. I've had so much talk, but we are not walking the talk. Right. We need to see real investment. Go to the teaching hospital. One young person, a businessman from Plateau, University of Just Teaching Hospital. But go and see the rest of the building, how dilapidated the place is. This is a tertiary medical facility. Now, because our leaders can still fly out and go for treatment in different parts of the world, this is unacceptable. We need a sense of solidarity. Right. I tell you what, when things were working, even though the differences were there, but we hardly could tell. We were almost colorblind, if I might use that expression. We lived together. We celebrated the festivities together, religious festivities together. So government needs to really do more, because there is a correlation between socioeconomic conditions and peace. And then the government has to do more in the area of security. I had mentioned on your program previously that the government must not renege in its sovereign prerogative to provide for security, to protect lives and property. If the government has not been able to do that effectively, that is why you will have proliferation of non-state actors involved in internal security, the so-called vigilante groups. And if you don't regulate them properly, these guys, of course, they have den guns, they have locally manufactured guns, but these are lethal weapons. And now, because they are not trained and they are not regulated, and also because they are part of this ecosystem of this lack of unity, of this idea of these stereotypes, they can take this kind of erratic action like the one that happened in Iromi, Edo State, unfortunately. So the government needs to really take on its responsibility in ensuring that security is given important attention, given serious attention. Citizens have role in security. They can share information, but the citizens carrying arms, sometimes when you're traveling, you don't know the difference between a real police and a vigilante. It creates confusion, or even a kidnapper. And this kind of confusion is unacceptable. Right. And I also want to say, in terms of how to forge unity like other countries have done. Look at Europe as a case study. They have also different languages, different countries. But what Europe has done and has encouraged is to promote the concept of nation that is civil and democratic. In other words, we have always tried to promote the idea of a nation based on, we talk about ethnic nationalities and talk in terms of those cultural parameters that define a nation. But if you look at the fact that we are a plurinational state, it is important for us to evolve ways of defining nation in civil and democratic ways. Right. And what I mean by that, who is a citizen? Who is a Nigerian? So it's not just based on their ethnicity, it's not just based on their religion, but it's based on the fact that if you carry the green passport, if you carry the white, green, the green, white, green flag, you are a Nigerian. And wherever you go, you are guaranteed the freedom to live, to go about doing your businesses. And I see you as my compatriot. I see you as my brother and as my sister. But you see, in many surveys that had been done on nationality in Nigeria, people put their religion and ethnicity first before national identity. Right. We are not saying that religion is not, for example, for me, my faith is the most important thing. But in terms of defining my place in Nigeria and how I relate with other Nigerians, I would rather see myself as a Nigerian and see the other person as a Nigerian first before I will consider the ethnicity or consider their religion. And right. That is what we need to have an inverse of this thinking that puts our ethnicity or our religion before our national identity.
Right. Dr. Yakubu Joseph, as always, fascinating listening to you. I wish we could go on, but that is all the time can allow us to take at the moment. I get the sense that we will revisit this conversation in the near future soon. Thank you so much for taking the time and for your insight on this one. We really do appreciate you for joining us on Daybreak.
My pleasure.
All right.